In this video, we're going to look at what's motivated me, why I've started doing this now in this particular time. Over the last few weeks, the support has been amazing, but one of the things that's been asked the most is why now? What's triggered this desire to lose weight at this point? And I wanted to cover that in this video. So we'll talk about those things shortly. Before we get into those things, I just wanted to say welcome back to A Nerd's Journey. I'm your host, Mark, and thank you very much for the support. As always, if you like these videos, please do hit subscribe so you can be notified of upcoming ones. And as always, if there is anybody you know who would benefit from these videos, please do share it with them, and hopefully it will help them as well. Thank you. So the question is, why now? And what's motivated me to do this weight loss journey? There's been a few things over the years, but I want to start with something that didn't motivate me, which is, for the longest time, for years, people have always said you're overweight, there are health risks, implications for being so overweight, from doctors, parents, I love you both, but constantly over the years, all of the kind of tut-tuts, you're doing harm to yourself. I kind of got very blasé with that. I was always big. I didn't really think about it. If somebody confronted me too much, I just kind of ignored them and moved on. That's the way that life was. The thing that actually did start to get me thinking about weight loss and how overweight I was a few years ago. I had to go for an operation. And as I was on the waiting list for the operation, I had this conversation with the doctor at the time saying, you do realise that you can have this operation, but you're going to be waiting quite a long time because you're overweight for a normal hospital bed. And it never really struck me at that time that I was that overweight. And that really was a wake-up call in terms of, I don't really want to be treated like the bariatric person, with a special bed and everything else. My wife's a nurse, so I've always been hearing the stories of that very overweight patient that takes like 6 of them to actually roll over. And although my mobility has always been okay for my size, I didn't want to be that person who had to have 101 nurses surrounding the bed trying to move them and turn them. So that for me was a kind of eye-opener. And at that point, I decided that I needed to lose the weight to actually get into a normal bed in time for the operation, which was going to be in 5 or 6 months. And that really, for me, was the first time I actually considered not the theoretical, you could get health implications, but there was an immediate implication of, actually, if I do go for this operation, I am going to be in that special bed for the overweight person, and there's going to be multiple nurses trying to turn me and all the rest of it, worst case. And I really sat there and thought, actually, do I want to be that person? So that was the first time really that I actually went, do you know something? I probably do need to actually start losing weight. Now, my wife has known me for 20 years. We've been married for 10 years. So it wasn't her nagging me. It wasn't somebody, at the back of my head going, you must lose weight. It was a simple conversation with a doctor who said, you can have this operation, but you're going to be treated as that massively overweight person. And you might need to wait a little bit longer because there are a limited number of those big person beds. So that for me was an awakening. The other thing which was an awakening for me is my wife has been terrified of the sea, of all things in the sea, under the sea, on the sea, basically scared of anything to do with water that wasn't in a swimming pool or maybe a river. Rivers were a bit of a grey area. Now, I've always had a passion for scuba diving. I've loved it. I've loved it from when my parents took me scuba diving when I was about 12. I've loved it forever, and I used to do a lot of scuba diving. And when I got with my wife, I didn't want to go scuba diving and leave her on shore. She probably would have been fine with it, but I didn't want to. But a couple of years ago, well, just over a year ago now, she took up scuba diving. mainly to shut me up so that I wouldn't ask her if she would give it a try anymore. And lo and behold, she's fallen in love with it. So in a year, she's gone from not scuba diving at all to being a master diver, which is about as high as you can go in the non-professional levels of diving. And it's become a real passion. Now, I thought to myself, well, if she's going to be diving, I want to be diving, and I want to be doing it like I used to, in terms of, ease of getting the water, out of the water, lugging kit around and everything else. And so that's really one of the big things that said to me, right, it's time. It really is. I'd started to lose the weight for the operation. I got there. I got into a normal bed, which was a big achievement, which made me, smile a little bit, but only by a few pounds. But I did it. And then at that point, I sat there and went, okay, fine, I'm here now. I'll stop. And then with the scuba diving piece that came along later, it really is time to shed quite a lot of weight. It's one of those things where, carrying excess weight in terms of fat, adds quite a few implications in terms of safety of diving. I don't want to hurt myself doing that. And suddenly my weight has become a really real thing, which is I need to lose it because I do want to dive with my wife for years to come. And therefore it's a really key thing to actually get to a healthy, active life. So the motivation really for me wasn't the years of nagging is the wrong word. It wasn't the years of people, saying you need to lose weight. It wasn't the years of, these theoretical health implications that I could be doing. For me, it was a real thing. It was, you need to lose weight if you want to be treated as a normal patient rather than as that grossly overweight person in a special bed in the corner of the ward. Added to that, it was the personal goals changed. So whereas in my head I never saw a difference between me over the years, I still had the normal activities which I classed as normal. Now in hindsight, the fact that when I went up the stairs when I lived in a flat I was out of breath probably should have given me a kick up the behind to actually start losing some weight, but it didn't. It's one of those things, you get so engrossed in your own world that actually you actually don't notice the decline in the activities you're doing because you just think that activity is normal. Made worse, of course, by actually being a nerd and spending a lot of time at a computer. It's not exactly a very energetic activity. So one that was a little bit of a trouble to get your head out of that space of, I'm fine, I can do all the things I want to do. The fact that you need to get a seatbelt extender to sit on an airplane wasn't anything, that wasn't a problem because I still fitted in the airplane seat, but it's still the embarrassment of having to ask a stewardess for the belt extender, or as I had, because I travelled quite a bit for work, my own seatbelt extender in my bag so I didn't have to ask. And I always felt sorry for the people sat either side of me because, with all the best will in the world, you took up quite a lot of space. So the motivation, I think, is different for everybody. For me, it was that first kick of, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be in an oversized hospital bed. And then after that, it was a case of, well, actually, if I want to go and do the things that I used to and that I want to do again, a real effort it needs to be made in terms of losing weight and all the rest of it. The other big thing as well for me is the simple fact that in this world of COVID, yes, it's affected me in terms of I'm now working from home for work, but it's also affected the gyms being closed. But more than that, you're at a much higher risk if you do get COVID of getting complications and problems going forward. So do I really want to do that? If I've gone through the effort of working from home and isolating and being careful, do I not want to improve my chances should I, or when I get COVID, that I will survive it with as little complications as possible? And that is probably the thing that really pushed it over the edge this year. And when I noticed my weight slowly going back up, I decided I needed to do something drastic. And YouTube, this is the drastic option of actually having somebody or some people I have to report to on a weekly basis just to hold me accountable. So really, that's for me. That is, in short, the kind of why, the motivation, and why now that I'm actually doing this properly. It's the health benefits, yes, all the rest of it, but it's the real benefits to me of the scuba diving, because that's a hobby I want to get seriously back into. But it's also that implication of if I do, or when I do get COVID, I don't want to particularly die from it. So it'd be quite nice to have a better chance. And a better chance is lose some weight, be generally a bit healthier, and that will help with that. So that's the why now and the motivation for it for those people who've been asking. So what do I do? What have I been doing? I've talked about it in other videos, but I just wanted to sort of clarify here. It's not particularly about avoiding everything that's unhealthy. It's just about being more mindful and being healthier going forward. And part of that was we actually got a couple of dogs a while ago. One particularly, which will be on the screen somewhere here, is a lovely dog, but he needs to be walked. If you don't walk him every day for a decent walk, he will start going crazy and then drive you crazy in the house. So we, my wife and I, put ourselves in the position where we had to walk, so therefore it had to get you out of the house. And yes, as I've confessed before, that those walks started off quite small and quite short, and they've progressively got longer and longer over time. And now, we don't think much of anything for going for 2, 3, 4 miles at a time, given time and over the weekends, and then getting in a good hour or so each day during the working day. Those things do build up. We've talked about the TD calculators. We've talked about actually eating more sensibly and being aware of what you're eating. A big one for me was not drinking my calories, because I was really bad for that. But it's also, for me, I know that I like a takeaway. I know that I like a curry or a Chinese or pretty much anything, if I'm being brutally honest. And whereas before I'd have 2 or 3 takeaways in a week, now it might be 2 takeaways in an actual month, and I schedule them as rewards. They are something that I'm not embarrassed about. I don't try and hide. I just account for them. And I might pick a more healthy option from the Chinese. I might pick a black bean sauce rather than a sweet and sour, because there's less sugars and things in the black bean sauce, but I'm still going to have it. But it's about being mindful and being aware of what you're doing and actually factoring that into your month. Although these weigh-ins I'm doing, and the next video will be a weigh-in, are weekly, I'm actually only really interested in the month. I'm really interested in, have I done more exercise this month than last month? Have I lost more weight this month than last month? Am I on a healthy track in terms of getting there? This is not for me a sprint, it's a marathon. Not that I would ever do a sprint or a marathon, but in terms of the journey, this is something that is long term. If you lose too much weight quickly, you're going to get the loose bags of skin, and I've got a little bit of that, but not too much. But if I lost weight much faster, I would get the loose skin and the unsightly things, which is a big fear for me. It's something that I know is probably going to happen, but I'm not comfortable with it. But it is something that if you lost weight very quickly, you'd get that a lot worse. You're also more likely to put it back on if you lose it too quickly. So for me, it's that whole thing of just being a little bit better, just being a little bit more active than you were before, about eating a little bit better this week than you did last week. And for me, it's all about the monthly weigh-in and measurements that I do. And we'll talk about those at the end of the month. Because for me, it's one of those things where I've come from a very heavy place. I am still heavy, but I've got I've made a lot of progress in that time, and it's from doing simple things, getting off my behind and actually going for walks, eating a little bit healthier and avoiding those jars of sauces that have all the hidden sugars and salts and things in. So now we actually cook better because we actually know what is going in, which means putting it into the likes of MyFitnessPal is easier because you've put everything in yourself. You're not looking at the back of a jar going, right, I'm allowed half a jar of this. You've actually made your own sauce rather than tomato ketchup or barbecue sauce. I never realised how bad barbecue sauce was, and I do love it. So what have I been doing? It's a combination of things in terms of being more careful with what I eat, being a little bit more active, being aware of what I'm doing in terms of not drinking my calories, but also treating myself from time to time, but know it's a treat and know that it shouldn't be a daily thing. I will have the odd beer here and there, but it's not multiple bottles, multiple cans every day. It's just when I feel like having a beer, I'll have one. I'll just make a note of it and I'll just be aware that I've had it. So it's not saying that life has to stop just because you're eating healthier and you're on your way to getting fitter. It's just about balancing how quickly you want to get there, i.e. how boring food you want to eat in terms of broccoli and chicken, and also weighing it up with actually enjoying the life while you're on the journey. So what have I been doing? A little bit of everything. Eating a little bit better, taking a little bit more activity, using the dogs for me is an excuse, but meeting a friend for a walk because you can't meet inside, that could be one. There's not a lot nicer than going for a walk with your friends, or your wife in this case. You can have a chat while you're walking, it makes the time go quicker, and it just is enjoyable. But what I'm saying is, I haven't put my life on hold. I just am aware of the Chinese or the pizza or whatever else I have, and I don't try and make up for it by slashing my calories in the rest of the week and being miserable. I just realise that you've got to have some enjoyment, and for me, food is a major enjoyment, but do it in moderation and do it knowing that it's not the healthiest, that you'll enjoy it. But little things, maybe one tip is, I used to order a takeaway that was big enough that I was still eating it the second day. Now I order what I want for the night, and I make sure that if there is anything left the next day, it goes in the bin. Simple as that. It stops me cheating the next day. So I have one cheat day, one fun day in terms of a dinner, a takeaway, whatever it is, but then I put it in the bin afterwards. So I enjoy it. But I suppose moderation, and doing more this month and the month before. Well, thank you for coming along on this journey with me yet again. This is a nerd's journey. I'm your host Mark. Thank you very much for watching and for all the support. It really has been appreciated. As always, please do subscribe if you want to see more of these videos, and please do share with anybody who you think might benefit from them. And I will see you in the coming weeks. Thank you.